Hello, this is Pastor Jonathan Meyer, bringing you God's Word for us today, April 12th, 2017. We are continuing in our Passion narrative as we are in the middle of Holy Week, and so we've just a couple days left after today of our Passion reading, and I'll just warn you, today's is a little bit longer than some of the other ones, so bear with me. Now, at every festival, the governor used to free one prisoner whom the crowd wanted and requested. At that time, there was a well-known prisoner by the name of Barabbas. Barabbas had been thrown into prison with the rebels who, in their revolt, had committed a murder that had taken place in the city. And the crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them as he had done before. "You have a custom that I set one person free for you at the Passover." Pilate answered them. "Whom do you want me to set free for you? Barabbas or Jesus, the King of the Jews, who is called Christ?" For he knew the ruling priests had handed Jesus over to him because they were jealous. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent someone to tell him, "Let that righteous man alone, because I suffered much in a dream last night on account of him." But the ruling priests and elders stirred up the people so that Pilate would release Barabbas to them and have Jesus killed. The governor asked them, "Which of the two do you want me to set free for you?" The whole crowd then shouted, "Not this one, away with him! Free Barabbas for us!" But because Pilate wanted to let Jesus go, he called out to the people again, "Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called Christ, whom you call the King of the Jews?" Then they all kept yelling, "Crucify! Crucify him!" So Pilate asked them a third time, "Why? What wrong has he done? I have found nothing in him that deserves death, so I'm going to teach him a lesson and let him go." But they began to shout even louder, "Crucify him!" Their shouts were overpowering Pilate. Pilate took Jesus and had him whipped. The governor's soldiers took Jesus into the palace, which is the praetorium, and they called together and gathered the whole troop of soldiers around him. The soldiers took off his clothes and put a scarlet robe on him. They twisted some thorns into a crown, placed it on his head, and put a stick in his right hand. Then they went up to Jesus, knelt before him, and worshipped him. Making fun of him, they began to greet him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" After having spit on him, they took the stick and began to beat him on the head with it, and slapped his face. After they had made fun of him, Pilate went outside again and told them, "I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no guilt in him." Jesus came outside wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Look at the man." When the ruling priests and the servants saw him, they shouted, "Crucify, crucify him." Pilate told them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I do not find him guilty of anything." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to that law he deserves to die, because he has claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard them say that, he was frightened more than ever. He went into the palace again and asked Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus did not give him an answer. Pilate then asked him, "Aren't you going to speak to me? Don't you know I have the authority to free you or the authority to crucify you?" Jesus answered him, "You would not have any authority over me if it had not been given to you from above. That is why the man who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." This made Pilate anxious to let him go. But the Jews shouted, "If you let him go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who makes himself a king is speaking against Caesar." When Pilate heard these words, he took Jesus outside and sat in the judge's seat at a place called Stone Pavement, or Gabbatha in Aramaic. It was the day of the preparation of the Passover, and about 6 in the morning. He said to the Jews, "Look at your king." Then they shouted, "Away with him! Kill him! Crucify him!" Pilate asked them, "Should I crucify your king?" "We have no king but Caesar," the ruling priests answered. When he saw that he was not getting anywhere, but that a riot was breaking out instead, Pilate took water and washed his hands before the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "See to it to yourselves." And all the people answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." Then Pilate, wanting to satisfy the people, decided that what they demanded should be done. He let them have Barabbas, who had been put in prison for revolt and murder, for whom they were asking. Then Pilate handed Jesus over to them to be crucified in line with their wishes. The soldiers took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. So they took Jesus and led him out to crucify him. He was carrying his own cross. As they were going out, they found a man from Cyrene by the name of Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus. He was on his way in from the country, and as he was about to pass by, they took hold of him, laid the cross on him, and forced him to carry it behind Jesus. A large crowd of the people followed him. The women in the crowd were beating their breasts and weeping over him. He turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not continue to cry over me. Rather cry over yourselves and your children, because the time is coming when people will say, 'Blessed are the women who could not have children, the wombs that did not bear, and the breasts that did not nurse.' Then people will say, 'To the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us.' For if this is done to the green tree, what will be done to a dry one?" 2 others who were criminals were also taken away to be executed with him. They took Jesus to what was called Place of the Skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. They tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh and gall, but when he tasted it, he refused to drink it. They crucified him there. At that time they crucified 2 robbers with him, one at his right and the other at his left, and Jesus in the middle. It was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. This has been God's Word for us today. Join us again tomorrow. We'll see you.